So welcome to the South East Climate Alliance knowledge sharing session. As there are just a few unfamiliar faces tonight, we wanted to briefly introduce SECA, or the South East Climate Alliance, before handing over to Nicola and Pooran. My name is Carrie Cort from Sussex Green Living. I'm one of the co-founders of the South East Climate Alliance, along with Nicola Peel. And how did SECA come about? So very, very briefly, like all good things, it started in nature. So Nicola and I fairly often meet up for a night hike or a walk in the countryside to walk and talk. And we went to Pooran Brooks, and at Pooran Brooks, we debated how we were going to connect up all the amazing, incredible environmentalists and climate activists that Nicola and I had been working with, mainly in East and West Sussex, and how we were going to connect them up and work better together, more powerfully together. So World SOS Climate Emergency Day was happening in February of 2019. And so we planned to run an event. We changed the venue 3 times because the numbers escalated. And in the end, I think we had about 150 people. It was a great event. And out of that, the South East Climate Alliance was born, thanks to an incredible steering committee, a very committed steering committee. We have kept SECA going, and it's grown. So now we have members across the southeast of England, Kent, East Sussex, West Sussex, Surrey and Hampshire. I think we've got about 150 odd member groups now. It's a coalition of environmental, faith and community groups, and schools as well, who've come together to apply more pressure, mainly in the early days, to councils, to pressurise them and encourage them to announce climate emergency or pass some sort of meaningful motion. And now really SECA acts as an umbrella group, encouraging and supporting action with our councils, sharing best practice and knowledge, which is what I'm delighted we're going to be doing tonight. Before I hand over to Nicola, and we're going to do a very, very quick poll. So we'd really love to see how many people, the people that we've got tonight, what county you actually come from.
There we go.
Excellent, brilliant. So it shows
West Sussex, we're still leading ahead there, and we've got 4% elsewhere.
And we'd like to know actually how many of you actually signed up to the South East Climate Alliance newsletter.
59%. Can you see that, Carrie? It's 59% said yes, they are subscribed.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's down the bottom. Lovely, excellent.
But the 20% that are not sure, you could always get in touch with us afterwards. I'll ping the email in a second in the chat, and we can check for you whether you are subscribed.
You know, sometimes when you send through stuff on MailChimp, it's not always coming through. So I just wanted to kind of do a bit of like research as to, you know, people have signed up and they're not getting it, or they're not signed up. So anyway, with no further ado, so Carrie's given us a little introduction of how, you know, that there was the light bulb moment to be the mycelial web and start joining up people in our bioregion in the southeast of England. So going on from there, we've also been doing, you know, environmental education. And one of the places that we were invited to speak was at Lancing College, which was where I had the good fortune to meet with Pooran. And a few years ago for SECA, I wanted to go and see BedZED. As you know, we could kind of like link to have on the SECA website for anybody that actually wants to come and see information on the various kind of aspects that we've been kind of looking at dividing, you know, SECA in previous events in housing, in transport, in energy, in wildlife and such like. So yeah, so it was great to actually meet Pooran at Lancing College, where we were speaking on their sustainability week. So that was really, you know, how we, you know, first met, and then we recently did the Solutions podcast together, and so I got to hear a little bit more about Pooran's work. But you know, there's no point me really saying any more, because we'll hand over to Pooran now to give us his introduction of what he's been doing and how we at SECA can learn. And what I found was really fascinating was the more recent work where, how do we actually embed climate, information within all areas of councils and organizations. So I think that this will be where, the chat will want to go, as for us that are already very active, to know how can we be of most use at this time. So thanks so much, Pooran, for coming, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nicola, and to SECA for inviting me here today. So what I'd like to do is just share a bit of a journey, which has been a long one now. I mean, over getting on for 30 years of working in sustainability, and yeah, it's been very interesting and brought me personally to quite an interesting place in my thinking as well. So I'll share stuff which is very practical, but also maybe some stuff which is a bit philosophical as well. And it'd be great to get your thoughts and explore ways that we might be able to help SECA in your mission. I'm going to try and share screens if I can. Let me just make sure I've got the right one. And I am hoping you can see making connections for a regenerative future. Is that, I can't see you now, so.
Yeah, we can see that, Pooran.
Okay,
I just want to remind people, if you've still got like lots of little thumbnails in the corner, to go up to hover with your mouse and kind of drop it down so you can hide it to just one thumbnail, so you haven't got it covering your presentation. And also, maybe whilst Pooran's speaking, we could turn off of our videos to save bandwidth, save energy, and after the presentations we can come back. So maybe a couple of us, I'll stay on, Pooran, so it doesn't look like you're talking to nobody.
I can't see anyone, so it does look as though I'm talking to nobody at the moment.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't make any difference to me at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay, so we'll say shut down so that you can see the whole screen. All right.
Great, thank you very much. And I realise that should be June 2022, so I'm a bit behind the times here. But yeah, so I started in sustainability back in the early 1990s and co-founded an environmental organisation called Bioregional. So very much inspired by the idea of how can we get more of our, how can we meet more of our needs from local, renewable or waste resources. Very much interested at the time in particularly in reducing our negative impact on rainforests and tropical forests, very topical in the early 1990s. So we looked at, for example, I set up a company, well, a forestry company. We set up a forestry company, which is still going, actually, all these years later, reintroducing traditional woodland management to some of the neglected coppice woodlands in the southeast, looking at producing products which could replace less sustainable imports. So started making charcoal and set up a company which we ran for 15 years, and at the high point had 70 woodland workers from all around, or woodland businesses from all around the UK, all supplying in a coordinated network, supplying local retail outlets like B&Q and Sainsbury's, with this idea of how could we combine central coordination with decentralized production. We also worked with farmers in Kent and Essex to grow hemp on a trial basis, and set up a community farm as well, Sutton Community Farm, which is still going. And we also revived the lavender industry of southeast London as well. First as a community project, working with a local prison, taking cuttings from some of the original lavender bushes, which were still left in people's gardens from in suburban gardens from when the railways had grown out, with volunteers taking those cuttings, the local prison, Downview Prison in Banstead, growing it up. Went to our local council and they gave us disused allotment land to start planting up lavender fields. And then Yardley heard about us and started sponsoring us. We ended up getting a lease on some disused farmland in Banstead, set up a 20-acre lavender farm, which we then sold on to Mayfield Lavender. Some of you may know it. It's become quite a visitor attraction. So all the time looking at how can we use more local resources and get people employed in more sustainable livelihoods. But we were growing as an organisation. We needed new offices. So we went to our local authority, Sutton, and said, have you got any land you can lease for building some green offices? And they said, no, but we're selling land for residential development. Why don't you build an eco-village and we'll give you planning permission for your offices at the centre of it? So that's how BedZED came about, Beddington Zero Fossil Energy Development. So that we started working on that in the late 1990s. We put together a business plan working with architects, Bill Dunster architects, Arup engineers, Gardner and Theobald quantity surveyors. We then tried to find a developer partner, and that process came across the Peabody Trust, a housing association. They agreed to partner with us to bid for the land and then to for it to be a combination of private housing and social housing. We bid for the site. We weren't quite the highest bidder. Barrett's actually had a higher financial bid than us, but we were within 10% of Barrett's bid. So the council took into account the carbon savings that we were making, took that into account and actually awarded the site to us. So we started construction in 1999, I think, or was it 2000, and we completed construction in 2002. Not everything there worked, but it's 100 homes, about 20,000 square feet or 2,000 square meters of commercial and community space. In fact, I bought the first apartment there as well as having our offices there, so I could talk for hours about this project. And it is fair, we learned as much how not to do things as how to do things, but nonetheless, basically passive house standards in insulation, solar orientated architecture, a lot of local materials. So we use Cranley brick. We used our own forestry team to provide some of the green oak weatherboarding, for example. And a lot of that came from Croydon's woodlands, where we had worked with Croydon Council to introduce forest management practices to the management of street and park trees as well there. And worked with the forestry department to reintroduce some forestry management to some of the woodlands in Croydon. So some of that green oak came here. We used lots of reclaimed materials. So part of that was steel, reclaimed steel for some of the structure, which came from Brighton Station. It was Brighton Station was being renovated at the time. When the structure, the renovation structure was coming down, we took some of that steel and it's incorporated into this development. Integrated solar panels as well, as you can see there. So these are some of the figures that we got. We had an 80% space heating saving, 50% reduction in electricity use, 54% reduction in water use, 65% reduction in car use. So we did introduce the first car sharing scheme into the UK, car club, and it was the first project in the UK which broke with planning policy, and we had to create new planning policy by not having a minimum number of car parking spaces. So we reduced from planning policy, which was 1.6 car parking spaces per home, down to 1 car parking space per home. But that came with a green transport plan as a planning condition, and we introduced that. So a lot of sort of groundbreaking in that, and when I look back on it, I think we were really lucky actually to get through all of that, because there were so many different hurdles that we have to get through. So naivety was a great ally of ours in these early days. But also, we ended up building a lot of social capital. So the average person at BedZED knows 20 of their neighbours by name, which is something like 4 times the UK average now. Having built that development, living there, we had 27 university research projects around it. We were getting all these data around it, but we realised we really had to find some way of communicating what we were trying to do. So I coined the term OnePlanet living. How can we lead happy, healthy lives within the resources of our OnePlanet? We started working closely with the Global Footprint Network based out of California, who had used ecological footprinting to enable people to account for any particular lifestyle. And we started turning those footprint figures, which were in terms of hectares, or global hectares, into number of planets it might take to support a lifestyle, with the idea that if we all live like Europeans, we would need 3 planets to support us. If we all live like North Americans, we'd need 5 planets. So then the challenge became very simple. How can we lead happy, healthy lives within the resources we can harvest renewably on our one planet? So that very simple story became actually an incredibly powerful way to engage people, and I led a process with various partners, including WWF, to identify 10 very simple principles which would help us build robust sustainability strategies. And you can see those 10 principles there on the right-hand side, all the way from zero carbon energy and zero waste up to culture and community equity and local economy and health and happiness. So we created that in 2002. Yeah, then I led the OnePlanet Living initiative from 2002 to 2019, and had really great fun working around the world with developers, cities, manufacturing companies, retailers, schools, and just some of the projects are there. And in fact, we also, I think I'll go through some of these, I've got some slides, but we also wrote the sustainability strategy for the London 2012 Olympics, which was called the OnePlanet Games. And the final thing to mention there was we also held the first workshop at the United Nations together with the Colombian government to propose the Sustainable Development Goals using all these OnePlanet Living projects around the world and our partners as inspiration for that. So, you know, we're very proud that in fact the SDGs are a direct derivative of OnePlanet Living. But here are some of the other projects that we did after BedZED. So this was One Brighton. I co-founded another company. We got financial backing from Quintain Estates and Development PLC, and we joint ventured with Crest Nicholson PLC, one of our top 10 house builders, and we built out this development of 172 apartments in Brighton. But we went completely private car free. I still think it's the largest development in the UK which doesn't have private car parking. It only has car clubs, disabled parking, and a very small number of visitor car parking spaces. We set up a community-owned energy services company that's been running since 2010. Bulk buys guaranteed, green electricity. We also have an on-site biomass boiler. We probably wouldn't do that again, but anyway, it still operates on forest FSC certified wood pellets, but we also bulk buy guaranteed green electricity. And when we set this up, we were able to supply 100% green electricity at about a 20% saving to brown electricity, or brown energy. In fact, now I think we're supplying about a 10% saving, just because you know, our grid has got greener in that time. It was also the most profitable of Crest Nicholson's portfolio at the time, so we were able to start showing how we can build something green, which is also profitable. We used the 10 OnePlanet Living principles. BedZED was very much an architecture-driven project. We learned actually the biggest savings were not coming from the architecture, they were actually coming from the lifestyles we were supporting. So we moved to a more lifestyles-based approach, including really designing for health, and my own background's actually in medical sciences. But here's a quote from Silvana, one of our residents there. We moved into One Brighton, adopted a healthier lifestyle. In fact, they sold 2 cars, got out on their bikes, started eating more healthy food. We're linked up with local farmers to help supply the development, and they lost 35 kilos, so about 80 pounds between them in 18 months. So I'm a firm believer that, yeah, we really can design places which can improve people's health outcomes. This is another project, Bicester Ecotown. The first phase is complete, but it's the first phase of about 6,000 homes, which includes things like a zero carbon school, and you can see the homes there with the PV panels on those buildings. We also worked with Brighton and Hove at the time to put in a sustainability strategy called OnePlanet City. We worked with large companies and small companies. So this was B&Q, worked with them for 12 years. They adopted OnePlanet Living as their inspiration. They started looking at what products can they supply to help people lead a OnePlanet lifestyle, including things like introducing vegetable seeds so people can grow more vegetables at home. It helped them save some money as well. We also worked with small companies. This was our local coffee van, and we helped him start doing a OnePlanet makeover of his coffee van, including their attaching thin film solar panels to his van. This is one of my favorite projects. It's the extension to Disneyland Paris. The MD of Euro Disney and their joint venture partner, Erika Jakins, came over to BedZED, really liked the OnePlanet Living idea. So they said, we're doing an extension to Disneyland Paris, but we want to do it as themed on humans and nature in harmony. So we worked with them for 15 years from scratch. We conceived with Disney Imagineering and their engineers and architects a OnePlanet experience. It opened in 2017, so it's 1,000 holiday apartments using all the 10 OnePlanet Living principles. No cars in the center of the development, a completely rewilded landscape. So now there are more protected species after development than before. It's run on 100% renewable energy, including being able to swim outdoors in lagoons, which are heated on geothermal energy. So we had to draw down 2 kilometers to get the geothermal energy. And in fact, we're generating so much geothermal energy that it's now being exported to the main Disneyland complex to reduce its carbon footprint. And the whole experience, it's a fantastic place if you want to go for a holiday. We went there for our family holiday. And it was like walking into a science fiction vision of the future, but a utopian one. So a fantastic project. This is a project on Bainbridge Island, just off in Washington State, 140 zero carbon homes, food growing between the homes, multi-generational. And this project, sorry, shall I carry? I've got just a few more slides. I realize people may have questions, but perhaps I'll just go on and just a couple more slides and then stop, and then take some questions and then go on with the rest. But this was it's a large project, part complete now in the centre of Ottawa, capital city, of course, of Canada, where we had to work with 2 different cities because these islands straddle the middle of the Ottawa River. Okay, we'll take questions after the talk. But yeah, so we had to work with 2 cities, 2 provinces, the First Nations people, because it was of Aboriginal interest, and it's also within a kilometre of the Parliament building. So I had to go through the National Planning Commission. And we did this complex, working with the developer. We got through 5 different planning authorities in 9 months, even though this was a really complex project. And the developers, you know, we can't always guarantee that, but the developer said it was just because we could tell a simple story. So sustainability now has got wrapped up a lot in a lot of complex accounting around carbon. But that's not what engages people. What engages people is a simple story they can understand. You know, I do believe in metrics and data, but absolutely story is, I would say, 90% of what we need to do, and it's 10% data and 90% story. Maybe that's you know, maybe it's 70-30, maybe it's even 50-50, but I think we make a massive mistake when we try and look at data-driven approaches to sustainability as the way to lead on sustainability. But where am I going now? Let's have a look. But after all of this, we so you know, I couldn't have had more fun over those 17-18 years working with fantastic people all around the world. But we started then to look at, okay, how can we scale what we're doing? And of course, when you look at that, you have to look at digital technology. So we started to look at digital technology to enable us to do this. And I'm simplifying here what was actually a 10-year journey to try and understand what we were trying to do. Really, what we came down to understanding was that sustainability is really about understanding interconnectedness, that everything is interconnected. What we build determines how dependent we are on cars. If those cars are internal combustion engine cars, they're creating pollutants which are damaging our health. They're also contributing to climate change, supporting the oil industry, which also creates single-use plastics, which is ending up in the oceans, filling our fish up with plastics. If we choose to eat those fish, we're filling ourselves up with plastics, and we're also killing penguins on the other side. You know, those plastics are also killing penguins on the other side of the planet. So everything is interconnected, but we don't have the tools, the culture you know, to understand those connections, visualize those connections, manage those connections, measure those connections. So not seeing interconnectedness is the fundamental problem, I would say, we've got in our culture and in the society we've created. I'm just picking up some those chat as we're going along. So what we did was look at creating technology which helped us visualize those connections and manage those connections. So we've created a platform where we can take any plan, or you can create any plan using a very simple methodology of outcomes, what you want to achieve, actions, how you're going to achieve them, indicators, what you might track, and some of those indicators might have targets associated with them. So within a plan, you can create mind maps, if you like, of how those are interconnected, so your plans can be more joined up. But our technology also enables you to connect different plans together. So you can connect mind maps to mind maps, which is unusual. And those those plans can be within an organization. So for example, within a local government, it can be, how can we connect transport plans to health and well-being plans, to climate plans, to economic development plans. So we've started to do that with local governments. We've also done it actually at a national level with the government of Rwanda, but that's another story. But you can also do it across organisations. So how can different plans from different organisations work together? Because really we're going to need, we talk a lot of, and quite rightly, about the need for systems change, but that systems change has to happen across organisational boundaries, and we have to break down not just the silos within organisations, but the silos between organisations to get that systems change. And then the way we do that is using what we call shared outcomes and shared indicators. So outcomes and indicators which we share beyond the boundaries of our own departments or our own organisations. And we talk about connecting people in ecosystems to collaborate on shared outcomes and shared indicators. But we can also, I mean, sustainability has become so complex. Every different sector, almost every different company now uses a different sustainability framework or their own sets of principles. So everyone views this, the world through their own lens. So because of the database structures we use, these network database structures, technically they're called graph database structures, which is very different from most data. Most data we hold in the world is held in what are known as SQL type databases, or what I like to call cellular databases. So it's things like Excel type databases, where all the data is held in rows and columns. And that doesn't make it very easy for us to create the interconnectedness to see the links. And in fact, these network databases are primarily based around holding data based on its interconnectedness. And in fact, I now sort of see how many problems have been caused by us using things like Excel tools. So for example, many of you may have had this experience. You create a spreadsheet and you start linking certain cells together, but then sometimes it says error circular reference. So there are two cells which should be linked together, but Excel doesn't like it because it's a circular reference, and so you remove it. But in fact, very simply, even if you try and say model a healthy forest where the trees are photosynthesizing, they're creating sugars, those sugars are being fed to fungi, the fungi then thrive, and in return they're giving micronutrients back to the tree, which then makes the tree grow better, and you get a healthy forest that way. If you model that in a very simple way, there are only about six or so cells for that, but Excel doesn't like it because it's all a circular reference. So in fact, the most important relationships which we need in order to create healthy systems are exactly the sorts of connections and links which Excel doesn't like. And in fact, we take those out of our models of the world, and then we view the world in a way which Excel likes us to view the world, not in the way we know the world actually works. So a little bit philosophical there, but actually a very simple demo that we can do. But actually, the whole network database structure enables us to create what we call our lenses functionality. So we can, at click of a button, to look at any particular plan through any lens that you want. It might be the Sustainable Development Goals, it might be BREEAM for construction, it might be B Corp, for those of you who are familiar with B Corp certification, for example, or it can be OnePlanet Living, or it can be a lens that you create yourself. So everyone can look at the world in the way they're used to looking at the world, but it all is held within one single source of truth, if you like, which you can view through any lens that you want, so you can speak to the audiences that you want to speak to. But it automatically generates reports for you. It converts it. The mind maps are great for planning. When you want to manage things, you want it in a more linear form, so it automatically converts it into an Excel type format. It also enables you to create reports if you want, and then even publish online. But this is some work we did, for example, with Oxford City Council on their sustainability strategy, looking at, of course, the interconnectedness of health, jobs, climate, waste, and all of that. And in fact, something which is can be quite difficult to communicate. Councillor Tom Hayes here said the visualization process we did on OnePlanet.com made a complex and often overwhelming process simple and accessible. And particularly working with local governments, we work really at the moment with complex real estate projects and with local government. But local government has really become, has been forced into a position where it's reacting to issues, and we see ourselves tearing our hair out, over and creating plans which are very reactive around issues. And in fact, if we could just get out of the weeds of that and start really thinking about what are the outcomes we want to achieve and how do they fit together, that we really have to move to a more outcomes-based approach, get out of the issues, because dealing with issues does not give good outcomes. We have to look at outcomes in which issues really don't arise. My own background's in medical sciences, as I said, and 80% of NHS spending can be avoided if we promoted healthy lifestyles, healthy diets, we improved air quality. So, and even doctors are now saying, we've had it completely wrong. We've been treating disease. We haven't been promoting health. And so 80% of NHS spending is avoidable. If we can think about promoting health, thinking about the outcomes we want to achieve, we can save masses of money as well in that process. We did a bit of work with the Connected Places Catapult, which is a government-backed organisation, and we've put their Net Zero Navigator tool online, and local governments are starting to use that as well. So we can take really detailed knowledge and take people through a process, but it exports its recommendations into the OnePlanet platform, so you can see how any net zero strategy contributes to health, or contributes to jobs, or contributes to building natural capital. And I'll show that to you as well. But over the next 18 months, we're going to start adding calculators to the platform so that we can create whole business cases, but holistic business cases which don't just cover financial cost. They also cover the carbon benefits, the social value benefits, and the natural capital benefits as well. So that's what I wanted to share. I'm going to stop for a moment because I can, and maybe we can take a few minutes for questions now, but then I can actually show you the platform live and how it works. And we're still in the early stages. So we've got a handful of customers. They are the real innovators we've been working with. They are paying customers, which is great, and includes 3 local councils: Enfield Council, Watford, and Haringey, where we've started working with them as a small cohort to start using the platform to align all their different departmental strategies around climate action, and that cohort will finish in September. But in the interim, we want to get more local governments starting to think about being more joined up and using climate action as a way of joining up different departmental strategies, particularly where climate budgets are limited. So can we repurpose, for example, transport budgets, or align transport budgets, public health budgets, economic development budgets in a way where they're contributing to shared outcomes around climate action as well. So I'll stop for a few minutes there and then share the platform to show you what we're doing. But it's very much about helping people think in a more joined up way, which actually uses a different part of our brain. For those of you who follow neuroscience side, and particularly work now of people like Professor Ian McGilchrist, that we've become a left hemisphere dominated society, which is massively problematic, and that we actually need tools to unlock the potential of our right hemisphere, which understands meaning, understands context, understands value, while the left hemisphere only really understands cost. That sort of idea.
Well, thank you, Pooran. So that's really given people a bit of an overview of, well, I mean, all the amazing work that you've done so far, and now, kind of where you're going with this current work, which I know you're going to go into a bit more detailed into the frameworks, but just going over some of the questions that have come up. About who should we target in councils, who is the most influential officer to share OnePlanet living with, and is there a tool you can recommend for optimizing the co-benefits? So I don't know if you want to comment on any of those questions first.
Yeah, oh God, there's so many questions, aren't there? And I was reading some of them as we were going through. Yeah, we are going to start looking at, for example, on the co-benefits, optimizing the co-benefits. At the moment, it's human intelligence powered. So it's really, we don't quantify, well, in September, we'll start quantifying the co-benefits. I mean, it's always a bit difficult. Well, you have to take all numbers with a pinch of salt anyway. But we will start in October building what we're calling our business case generator, where we will start quantifying the interrelationships between outcomes, actions, and indicators. So we want to get to a position within a year's time where you can start putting together ideas for a project, say around a cycle path, and it will start saying, okay, the sorts of co-benefits are to improving air quality. Those sorts of benefits will lead to these sorts of health outcomes, improving respiratory health, which will save the NHS this amount of money, for example. But also, if you're getting cars off the road, it could free up this much space. So what could that space be used for? It could be used, say, for food growing or for wildlife, and that could bring these sorts of benefits. So we want to get to that position, but we're about a year away from that. But at the moment, this just helps the conversation between different departments or between different plans at the moment. We're hoping that's really going to be different departments. So, for example, with Enfield, they want one person in each of their departments initially to start using the platform and start collaborating so that, around transport, health and employment, for example, and health. There are other questions. I don't know whether I answered that one very well, but yeah, within 18 months or so, we want to have a tool which helps you quantify those co-benefits. Were there other questions as well, Nicola, or I'm just wondering which ones to take? Oh, you're on mute this time, Nicola. I'm going to be.
Is there any way to optimize how to build in biomimicry, identifying natural systems that we can learn from?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I think from a biomimicry perspective, at a very sort of fundamental level, that ecosystems thrive through reciprocity. You know, like trees feeding fungi, which then feed the trees. And we don't really have tools which easily give us that idea of how actually I thrive when my ecosystem thrives. And that's exactly what someone has said once they started using the tool. I get it now. Because I can see I'm part of an ecosystem, I can see that I can, if I can get what I want in a way which someone else gets what they want, actually the whole ecosystem thrives. And you can't easily do that with the tools we've got. So we're hoping ours, our platform helps provide that way of visualizing how collaborating in an ecosystem is very positive, and that the more shared outcomes you adopt into your plan, whether it's a company plan or organizational plan, actually the more powerful you become in your ecosystem. I don't know whether that makes sense. If I can visualize it in my own head, I'm not sure I'm managing to communicate that. But actually the more you can contribute to other members of the ecosystem, the more powerful you become, which is not really what we get from the sorts of tools that we have currently available to us.
Well, that comes down to a lot of the silo thinking, doesn't it? That, there's not a lot of sharing going on between many departments. And so, so hopefully this tool will be that way of showing that visually.
Yeah, we're hoping so. I think we're a few months or maybe a year away from actually having proof of that. But just initially, from a purely sort of communications point of view, people are finding that being able to see the interconnectedness of things actually resolves a lot of complexity and makes storytelling very easy, or much easier around the value of sustainability to different audiences.
And this is a good question coming in from Tony. You seem to have worked successfully with individuals and organizations that are often seen as enemies of sustainability, such as developers. How have you persuaded them to work with you?
Yeah, good question, Tony. I think so what the big difference was in all of our projects, and we probably had about 50 projects in the OnePlanet Living Network around the world. What was the key was the CEO was supportive and created the space for the rest of the organization to engage. So, for example, with Crest Nicholson, it was the CEO, Stephen Stone of Crest Nicholson, who said, yeah, this is what we want to do. Let's do it. And in a way, it was easier. It's got harder now because actually there's so much noise and so much greenwash and so much unnecessary complexity around sustainability that it's hard to get a simple story through. So it was a combination of a very simple story, OnePlanet Living. It was a combination of a world which wasn't as confused around sustainability and as it is now, although I think there's a slightly different approach we can take. So and it was talking in a way which wasn't threatening to these businesses or these organizations. It was saying you could have a place in the future, but you bring your skills and expertise, but deploy it to a slightly different end. It was very inclusive in that sense, in that we didn't exclude anyone from the conversation, either from the community or from business, and just said, look, we've got a common challenge here. Here's a simple story, 10 simple principles. Let's all contribute to building these projects.
So maybe if you want to share that, the other, how the website's actually working, and then, afterwards we can kind of like come back and people turn their videos on and see if some other voices want to come into the conversation. So I know that Pooran's going to show us a little bit how the website works. And then we can kind of like open up for more questions about how at SECA and how organizations can best, contact their local councils or local organizations with who we can work.
Okay, I'm going to try sharing again, and hopefully this works. I need to escape from this. How do I escape from this? It's odd. It worked before. Oh, I better not do that. Okay, stop share again.
We saw it earlier, so
yeah, it did work earlier, but it's not. I'm not quite doing the right thing. Let me try once more. But I'm just. How do I get out of this now? Anyone
drop that one down small?
Yeah, I want this one. I want to get out of this. Maybe I need to just press and come on.
Oh, there
we are. That was exit full screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that should be all right. Then I can close that, and then
yeah.
So here, okay. So here's the sort of thing. So we have this. This is a sort of dashboard that we have. It's actually very simple. There is a free, very simple version. You can just go to oneplanet.com, have a play around with it, so you can get a feel for it. But this is an ecosystem, as we call it. So for a large organization or a number of organizations. So this is their climate strategy. We have at the core, and we have here all the different plans that they have. So around joint health and well-being, integrated, I can't remember what this is. Is this, these are my colleagues, integrated, local government integrated strategy. Go back, there we've got MPhil's blue and green strategy, their net zero strategy, climate action plan, transport plan. So all these different plans, and each of those has been mapped as a mind map, and they connect up to this ecosystem plan. So sitting above all those plans are what we call the ecosystem plan, which is the vision with the key outcomes and indicators that the council wants to achieve. So we've got here, for example, more high quality employment, which is, or diverse and safe, inclusive places, active and healthy residents, for example. So those are classified at the moment through the lens of One Planet Living. So you can see, for example, how health and happiness links across to equity and local economy, culture and community, land and nature, travel and transport, sustainable food. In fact, they don't have anything on food, so that becomes it's a good gap analysis, if you like, very quick. So we'll be in the process with Enfield saying, look, actually, food is so important. You need to. We would recommend you have some strategies around food. You can see water, materials, waste, carbon. So you can see how your plan builds up together and how it's interconnected. And then I need to find some way of moving this so I can access my other tabs. So I'll stick that down here. But then let's see, what have I gone to? You can convert, you can add things like monitoring data, progress updates, and stories as well. So the platform enables you to add more data around the outcomes in particular plans. You can add actions, you can allocate them to people, but all of it is interconnected. So you can navigate it and rearrange the data. So for example, lots of organizations are really struggling to just keep up with reporting. So this, for example, I'm not sure how far we've done this, but this we can automatically convert, for example, into the Sustainable Development Goals, and it'll reorganize all the data to create an SDG report, for example, a Sustainable Development Goals report. But then you can also take any one of the shared outcomes, and this is all live. So if anyone, say in any one of the plans, in any one of the departments were to add a new action or indicator or whatever, it's automatically available to anyone who has access to the whole ecosystem, so that it tracks in real time, if you like. So for example, if we take this outcome around active and healthy residents, we can start seeing how different actions in different departments are contributing to that. So here, for example, you can see, in the transport plan, there is an action to engage new businesses to encourage more commuter trips to be taken by foot or bicycle. Now, you could have found that out, but here you can do it at the click of a button. Then you can go across to the, in the climate action plan, there is an action to develop a green infrastructure planting program. Then you can see also in that plan, there's review staff mileage policy. But you can see how the whole council-wide shared outcome of active, healthy lifestyles also links across, for example, to an outcome in the health and well-being strategy, but how it links to an outcome in transport, how it links to an outcome in being a zero carbon borough, for example. So this enables you to just navigate through based on the shared outcomes you want to achieve, and then being able to, if you like, rather than just having to wade through PDF documents, this is a living system where those PDFs have been made live, but also converted into a structure which enables them to be linked to each other. So, for example, it's quite shocking, really, when you think about it. Different departments have plans and strategies written in completely different ways. So some might be written around goals and themes, and and others will be written around key performance indicators, strategic objectives, and so it becomes very difficult to see how different plans connect. So converting them to the outcomes, what you want to achieve, the actions you're going to take to achieve them, and the indicators, what you're going to track, enables you to start being able to see how joined up or how not joined up different plans and strategies are. And just to show how easy it is to create a plan, you can just create an outcome. You can allocate it to a principle, and you can just choose different lenses if you want, but I'm just going to allocate this one to sustainable water. You add your outcome like that, it will appear, and then you can say, this outcome contributes to, also contributes to that outcome, and in fact, this action here contributes to that outcome as well. So it's a really quite a playful tool at its heart as well. And then you can connect that across to different plans as well. So that's how simple it is. And really just the core insight, if you like, the core functionality is let's look at links and connections and interconnectedness, and how do we do that, and then how do we visualize that. And finally, this is we can link to it more linear tools. So for example, this was the Net Zero Navigator, which was Excel based and was helping local governments go through a more linear process to identify actions, for example. So you can take people through a more linear process to help create plans. I won't go through all of this, but there are different actions you can take, and 109 different interventions that you can select. Sorry, I'm not very good at demoing this one because I don't use it. I don't really use this tool myself, but my colleagues are helping local governments use it. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and that's really what I wanted to share with you today.
Well, I think it is amazing, and you know, it's like the potential seems massive, and so thank you so much for sharing. So I don't know if we want to kind of open up to the audience, to anybody that's got any comments or questions, or it'd be nice to see some faces. And can you see everybody, Pooran, or have you managed to
yeah, I can
get out of your screen?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing people reappearing, real live people. So maybe if anybody wants to just come off of mute or put their hand up, or have got any, say, comments or questions, that would be great. Let's have a look.
How do councils, I mean, get charged, Pooran? I mean, that's probably a rather big statement or question.
Yeah, no. So we are a commercial company, although our biggest shareholder is Bioregional, which is a charity. We've had to invest about £3 million to get to where it is now. I mean, it's surprising how much technology takes to develop. So we are building it as a company, although a company, of course, with a mission. We do have free versions, but the basic ecosystem, which enables you to connect different plans together, which is the basic system which the councils we're working with are using, is £5,000 a year. For that, so it's not huge amounts of money, but for a council, particularly if it helps start unlocking stuff. But wherever possible, we don't want price to be a barrier to using this. So we do have a free version. We give upgraded versions free to schools. We give 80% discounts to community groups, for example. We want to find different models as well, where in fact even a community group could start mapping what its council is doing, because basically all these strategies are publicly available strategies. So, and each strategy or plan takes, with little more than 2 hours of training, each strategy or plan can be done in half a day to a day. So if you think of a local government as having, say, 10 main plans and strategies, it's about 5 to 10 person days work to show what a local government is doing, where the synergies are, where the conflicts are. Now we get 2 responses to that. We get from local government, great, we can see how this all fits together. And the other response is, oh no, it shows that we're not joined up, that our economic development strategy doesn't line up with our climate strategy, and our health strategy doesn't line up with our climate strategy, for example. But I think that's where the great potential is, because what we need is joined up government, and we're just hoping this tool, God forbid, might be a tool for joined up government. But it does mean you can't easily sell your economic development strategy to to local to businesses in a way which is not connected to how you sell your climate strategy to the constituency who are interested in the climate strategy. So
we've got a few more questions here, Pooran.
Yeah,
I mean, just going back to Carrie's original question, I'm sure a lot of us would like to know as well. Is there any particular individual or department that you think would be best to make the first contact with? If somebody's going in to speak with their council, who do you first touch base with?
So I think at the moment it is probably the people working on climate, because and why we're finding that is because they don't have much. They generally don't have much budget, so they have to get other departments to deliver the climate plan. And what they're finding is they've got a climate plan, but actually all the actions need to be with transport or public health or economic development. And so most councils have a climate plan of sorts now, but they need to get it delivered, and they need to engage with the other departments. So that's where we're finding traction. But I would say if we could get any chief execs interested, that's where it really needs to sit with the chief exec, who then wants the council to be as joined up as possible. I mean, maybe we can go through councillors as well, but I think it's really the chief exec who ultimately needs to own this and see the value of having a joined up organisation.
Joined up thinking, what a concept. And that goes on to somebody here saying, what size is the smallest organisation which could benefit? What about developers and universities?
Yeah, so we have, I mean, we've had individuals use our platform to create a joined up plan for themselves, a sustainability plan for themselves. So it doesn't even need to be an organisation. It's not really designed for individuals, although we do want to create a version which is much more engaging, if you like, from much more mobile friendly as well, so people can do their plans on their mobile phone. But the free version, we've had very small businesses, sole traders using it, and then the largest organisation we've ever done a pilot with, actually then lockdown happened and we weren't able to continue, was actually the government of Rwanda. I think, we feel it's totally scalable across any scale. It can be used by organisations, or it can be used by projects. As someone said, a real estate development project, a developer could use it for just one project. And in fact, where we're really interested in going in due course is the interface, say, between a developer and a local government. So what are the outcomes that a local government wants to achieve? And the developer then can take those shared outcomes and show then how their project is contributing to it. So we want, this is, I think, probably a rather fanciful dream, but wouldn't it be great if the planning process became a place for collaboration rather than for conflict? I think that is a bit fanciful, but we could maybe see with genuine developers who want to do the right thing, which I think there are very few of them around, to be honest. But if they want to do it authentically, I think this sort of platform can enable them to really show how they can contribute to outcomes around health, social outcomes, of course, natural capital outcomes, carbon outcomes.
Great. Talia's just asked, can you give more detail on your work with the government of Rwanda?
Yes, and it's a little while ago, but what happened was we, OnePlanet Living just the 10 OnePlanet principles, not initially the platform. We'd been using across a number of conservation and sustainable development estates in Africa. So this was, for example, one of those estates was a private part of the Serengeti. So it was the last part of the Serengeti which was unprotected, and the last part of the great wildebeest migration which was unprotected. And basically an American billionaire bought up, and it was a hunting concession. He bought up all the hunting rights and converted it into a conservation estate. Now, these estates are hundreds of square kilometers. So this was the size of Sussex, actually. And what he did was he bought up all the hunting rights and said, no, I'm going to rewild this area, but bring in 4 hotels, run 4 really upmarket hotels to generate the revenue to pay for anti-poaching and creating jobs for the local people, so that they didn't have to poach to earn their living. And so we started applying OnePlanet Living across that. Then they started working in Rwanda next to extend the gorilla habitat around the Volcanoes National Park in Rwanda, because actually, sorry, this is a little bit of a story, but I'll get to it, is that actually it's reached the peak population, the maximum population for gorillas in that area. This particular family joined up with some other families, and they have started expanding the gorilla habitat by another 25 square kilometers, and introduced a hotel there. And in order to do that, they had to work very closely with the Rwandan government. And it's a very small government, of course. It's a very interesting government. Of course, it's in the news for all sorts of reasons at the moment, which is, but putting that aside, it was they are possibly the most interesting government when it comes to sustainability, because they really see the value of the natural capital to their economy. And because it's a small country as well, we were able, through the families, we're going to approach the government and say, let's just try a pilot and see how we could use our platform to help you think about how economic development and nature conservation and getting foreign investment in can work together. So we started mapping that out, but then coronavirus happened, lockdown happened, and in fact we do want to, over the course of the next year, re-engage with the government of Rwanda as well.
And Jill, I don't know if it was an exclamation mark or a question mark. She said, "What about the Treasury?"
Yeah, so Treasury, we haven't engaged directly. We haven't been able to, but really, really interesting conversations through the catapult, actually. So the interesting thing is, the Treasury says we cannot invest in any we cannot invest money in any zero carbon activities, okay? Because it's politically unacceptable. And that's because the public do not want to invest in zero carbon, okay?
What evidence are they using? This is not true.
Well, interestingly,
it's what the Treasury wants to think.
No, it's not. Well, okay. But no political party can justify investment in zero carbon unless it's also got some other co-benefit, like health or jobs or levelling up. So those are the only things the public generally will accept investment in. So even if you look now in terms of where people put climate and environmental action in terms of their decision-making when they're voting, it's really low. It comes like something like 9th. So,
well, there's going to be a vacancy for a prime minister shortly. I think you should go for it.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, but
No, but it needs. When you say go in at the CEO level,
yeah,
we've got to take it up at the top level to get it even percolating down. That Climate Change Act in 2008 never percolated down because they never put in the links between national and local government. And I was with someone looking at the independent review of the West Sussex County Council local plan, and the person there put forward loads of ideas about climate action, and they were turned down because it didn't fit.
Jill, I think look, I think you're absolutely right, and you've got some very good points there. The point about Treasury, which was really interesting, is that we need to justify climate action on the basis of its benefits to either health or to jobs or to inclusivity. And then, in fact, we can get funding for climate action. We can't get, or it's not easy to get, and it might be impossible to get funding directly for climate action. So this is, so I think this is where we need to go, is to start justifying everything. And I think ultimately it's going to be health, because as the World Health Organization has said, the biggest threat to global health is climate. Twice as many people are dying in the UK from heat stress as they did 20 years ago. Of course, you know, that will continue. The massive health you know, problems going to be with mental health, with young people trying to cope with eco-anxiety. You know, we have health problems from emissions from internal combustion engine cars. We have health problems from lack of exercise, you know, which could be, if we created more sustainable places and people were walking and cycling more, we could get those health benefits. So I think, you know, Treasury are a law unto themselves, but there are people in Treasury who would really start supporting this if we could quantify the climate action benefits in terms of health, jobs and inclusivity.
We hosted COP26. We're still the host until 27.
Yeah.
Pull the finger out.
I completely agree with you, you know, that we should be doing this. But the reality is, at the moment, is still that it's very hard to get funding for climate action.
I stood in Glasgow and watched people with their backs to the third world representatives who were there.
Yeah.
They were not going to shift on giving equal rights over the issue and the harms. So get a move on harms. Get it out there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jill. Councillor James Meek, there's a question from you. Do you want to speak, or do you want me to read it? I've got James, how can this thinking and way of working function for business in a world that is run on fiscal imperative and competitive edge?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We, you know, we have used OnePlanet Living in a competitive world, in the conventional business world over the last over 20 years. So I think there is an opportunity for, and I think particularly now it's not so much being green or not green, it's being authentically green versus greenwashing, you know, because most companies now will say they're green. So I think we can help businesses who want to differentiate themselves on an authentic approach to sustainability. I think we'll sell it on that basis in the short to medium term, but ultimately, it's going to require us to have a completely different worldview, which is not so focused on competitiveness. It's not so focused on a outdated story around competition and the fact that survival of the fittest means it's a competitive thing. Actually, organisms thrive when their ecosystem thrives and when they're cooperating as an ecosystem. I mean, there's of course loads of stuff around that. So I think, but if we started to develop the parts of our brain, which understands interconnectedness, we then start seeing ourselves as part of a living planet, and seeing ourselves less as individuals and more as communities, more as ecosystems, more as a living planet, at which point we make very different decisions. And I think business at that point will change into not being so growth dependent, but being more service orientated, and not having to grow in order to be successful. I mean, a lot of lifestyle businesses don't have to grow. For example, people say running a craft business, they don't look at massive growth in order to survive. They, maybe, make jams which they sell locally. They don't necessarily want to grow. And I think the business. I think we will see a future where businesses are not driven by a growth imperative.
Thank you. So just a last question before we wrap up here.
Social enterprise, yeah.
Yeah, well, also Paul Allen from CAT has said, have you seen the Ashton Co-Benefits Toolkit, and do you have any reflections on that?
Yes, I have seen it a bit. My colleagues know it much better than I do. The interesting thing about, always with toolkits is how much do toolkits get used? It's one thing creating a toolkit, and another thing is seeing how much that is used. So I don't know how much the Ashton toolkit is actually getting used. But great if it is. And in fact, we had to have conversations with Ashton to take their toolkit, which I think is an Excel-based toolkit. Is that right? Is we could actually put that online, and it could export its recommendations into OnePlanet, so then it becomes part of a living system rather than just an Excel.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Pooran. I think that's given everybody a little bit more information that they might not have had before. And, I think a lot of us will be able to see the potential there. And just before we wrap up, I know Viv made another a poll. It speaks for itself, doesn't it? OnePlanet.com, and I think it's something that we'll all be able to explore. So thank you once again, Pooran and SECA and Carrie and Viv for hosting this. And if you're not already signed up to the SECA newsletter, then do. And and have a look at, there's always kind of more information on the SECA website, as well as we're polling, and obviously we will add the OnePlanet.com onto the SECA website as well, to encourage other people who are communicating with their councils and organizations to be able to, show and to be able to use this tool.
I think I'm right in saying, Viv, if people are already, if they don't know if they're on the mailing list or not, if they actually try and subscribe again, if it's the same email address, that MailChimp will dedupe it, won't they?
Also, if you're not already signed up, then there's going to be a SECA summer event coming up. So in a field maybe near you or not. So in the next newsletter, we'll be announcing information for those of us that want to come together and actually meet IRL in real life. So it'd be great to meet some new friends and faces as well. So thanks all for coming, and keep a lookout for these. Are the SECA knowledge sharing events that we are offering. So it's been a great one, Pooran. Thanks again for all the brilliant work that you do. And yes, we could carry on, but we said that we would wrap up at 8:30, and it is 8:30 on the dot. So Lots of great comments coming in, thanking you, saying how fabulous and what a great, exciting presentation that was. So I hope you're seeing all those, Pooran. So that really was a brilliant talk. And it shows us that there is all this great work going on. And I think the more that we can share this with others, then the better.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you all for coming and giving up your evenings for this, and very happy to connect with everyone. And, you know, we want to support the work of SECA and its members. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me at pooran.desai@oneplanet.com. But yeah, thank you all very much as well.
Yay. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Have a good
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.